Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Keneal Gale. There continues to be uncertainty this evening surrounding work on the Mandela Highway expansion project. Approximately 100 workers walked off the job late last week, complaining of poor working conditions and extremely low wages. The workers employed to China Harbour Engineering Company, CHEC, are accusing the Chinese company of exploiting Jamaican labor. They say there are insufficient sanitary conveniences on the work site and they're not given adequate protective gears. Some say they have not received an employment letter, nor has CHEC provided them with any documentation to prove their employment status. The unions representing the workers say they've been trying to meet with CHEC to sort out the issues, but that hasn't happened. The locals are calling on the government to intervene to settle the impasse. It's been almost 4 years since the Disabilities Act was passed, but its provisions are yet to be implemented. Executive Director of the Combined Disabilities Association, Gloria Goff, says a number of components have to be completed before the Act can become effective. She was a guest on BATV's business discussion show On Point. Sajana Small has more.
We have the regulations that have not yet been I don't know if they're being drafted, but they're certainly not yet gone to Parliament.
Gloria Goff says a number of elements in the Act needs to be completed.
We have the Disability Rights Tribunal, which is not yet established. Some steps are being taken, but it's not yet established. We have the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, which is going to be a body corporate. That has not yet happened, although some aspects are being dealt with right now to get it to that point. And we also have the codes of practice, and those are being developed, but they are not yet completed.
She says the Act as it now stands cannot be used to protect members of the disabled community.
Well, the gap is, there are gaps. And one of such gaps is the fact that for the Disabilities Act, it has been passed since 2014, but does not yet have an effective date. So while we talk about it and talk about what, according to the Disability Bill Act, it's really, you cannot take anybody to court on it. You can't really charge anybody for breaching it because it's not yet effective.
Goff says she hopes that the government will declare an effective date for the Disabilities Act this year.
Unless we, quote-unquote, step on the gas, and when I say we, I'm talking about the government and we as the disabled community start really pushing. Unless that happens, it's going to take a while. We are hoping, though, and I think the Minister of Labour is also hoping that we can that the government can declare an effective date this year.
For BATV News, I'm Sajana Small.
Complete chaos. That's what opposition spokesman on transport, Michael Phillips, says will be the case in the Jamaican public transportation sector if Transport Minister Robert Montague's proposed policy to establish unlimited bus and taxi route licenses becomes a reality. He says Minister Montague's free-for-all idea is not properly thought out and could have severe impact on the transportation sector. Mr. Phillips raised his concerns during his contribution to the sectoral debate in Parliament last week. Here's Jamila Maitland.
Mr. Phillips said a lot more can be done to improve the coordination and efficiency of the Jamaican transportation sector to bring quality service to the traveling public.
We have the subsidized government system operated mainly by the JUTC, which in turn gives franchises license to small operators to operate on specific routes in a support role. But this is not happening. It is a dog-eat-dog world out there, and everyone is fighting for their share of the transport dollar.
He said emphasis needs to be placed on modernizing the existing policies whilst enforcing the law.
The route taxi system designed to make available additional seats for the commuting public is not working well. This madness and chaos that have resurfaced in the system today is a result of the lack of enforcement of regulation, inadequate investment, misguided policies and mismanagement. And if nothing else, it signals the need for new and modern legislation to guide the process of development, improve service levels, pricing, and investment policy.
The Shadow Minister also expressed concerns about the lack of maintenance of the Jamaican Urban Transit Company JUTC buses to better serve the public. Meanwhile, as he acknowledged that the Transport Ministry has been doing well for aviation locally, he argued that more needs to be done on the ground to improve Jamaica's road network.
The transportation sector, Mr. Speaker, is not just about road infrastructure, cars, rails, boats, and planes. It is not just about transport depots, airports, and seaports. It is also about the coordinated movement of people, moving people from the hills of St. Andrew to the plains of downtown Kingston efficiently, in comfort, safety, with dignity.
For BATV News, I'm Jamila Maitland.
And when we come back, Jamaican company Medical Disposables and Supplies Limited crosses the $2 billion revenue mark. This and more after the break. Welcome back. Medical Disposables and Supplies Limited made over $2 billion in revenues for the first time in the company's history. The business made profits in excess of $100 million for the 2017-18 financial year. Sashana Small has more.
Revenue for the year was $2.05 billion, growing by $331 million or 19.3% when compared to the previous year. The company attributes this to an increase in product offerings, price increases, and growth in its new consumer business segment. Gross profit was $462.6 million, jumping by $51.8 million or 12.6% when compared to the previous year. Despite an increase of 16.1% or $44.2 million in operating expenses, the company retained a profit as this increase was offset by a growth in sales. Profit after tax rose by 9%. The company says it has generated $673.1 million in equity for shareholders. Earnings per share also increased to 42 cents. Operational expenses increased on average by 32%, while non-operational expenses decreased by $2.2 million or 6.3%. The company says this was mainly due to the gain on foreign exchange and the disposal of fixed assets. Total assets grew by 21.4% or $260.2 million, up from $1.214 billion to $1.474 billion. Meanwhile, Medical Disposables and Supplies Limited says inventories and receivables increased as a direct result of the increased business opportunities, which were reflected in the overall increase in sales. These assets were supported by the shareholders' equity and liabilities of $803.3 million, which grew by $150.6 million or 23.1%. In the meantime, the company says its liquidity position remains healthy and will allow it to continue to capitalize on the benefits period of the junior stock exchange for reinvestment in continued development. For BATV News, I'm Sashana Small.
The RJR Gleaner Communications Group saw a decline in revenues and income for the financial year 2017-2018. The company released its report to stockholders today. Javon Keys has been reading the document and now reports.
The RJR Communications Group described financial year 2017-2018, which ended on March 31, as one of strategic investments in high-value equipment, training and initiatives to underpin future growth. The group says its performance was greatly impacted by a drop in revenues by almost $183 million. However, there was an increase in the value of fixed assets by about $380 million. Finance costs amounted to $8 million with the purchase of a state state-of-the-art high-definition television outside broadcast unit. This investment, the RJ Gleaner Group says, puts them in a position to produce their own HD quality content and to compete in the market for other HD production services. Meanwhile, the group saw a drop in other income by $86 million. This was as a result of fluctuations in the exchange rate and low earnings on the group's foreign currency-dominated investment portfolio. There was a decline in direct expenses, down by 2% due to the lower costs of newspaper print, while selling expenses went down by $28 million. In the meantime, the group's administrative expenses saw an increase of almost $30 million, amounting to $1.1 billion. Other operating expenses also saw an increase of $18 million. For this financial year, the RJ Gleaner Communication Group is confident that in pursuing different strategies and taking other appropriate action, it will see long-term sustainability of the business. For BATV News, I'm Javon Keys.
Lasco Financial Services Limited has recorded a $250 million Jamaican dollars in net profits for the 2017-18 financial year. The company also recently acquired Credit Scotia, which has helped boost its revenues. Here's more.
Lasco Financial Services says net profit for the financial year ended March 31, 2018 increased by 35% from $187.7 million to $254.2 million. The company's revenue improved by 51%, moving from just over $1 billion to $1.6 billion, while earnings per share increased by 34.4%. The company says the strong performance was a result of its strategic plan to expand the business and provide quality service to customers locally and regionally, having acquired Credit Scotia last year, now renamed the Lasco Microfinance Limited. Meanwhile, Lasco Financial Services combined their newly acquired financial institution and their branch in Barbados. Together, the group has a total asset of $3.4 billion, an increase of more than 100% over last year's $1.6 billion. The company says it will continue to focus on the money service business, including money transfer, cambio, bill payment, and other retail financial transactions, while Lasco Microfinance Limited will handle loan contracts. However, the company admits that it will be impacted by the expected Microcredit Act. For BATV News, I'm Jamila Maitland.
Jamaican cosmetics products manufacturer Herbu Enterprise has secured a deal with CariMed to promote and retail its products across Jamaica and the Caribbean. Under the agreement, Herbu will more than double the number of outlets it distributes to locally and will establish a footprint in 5 Caribbean territories within the coming months. The partnership will also see Herbu's products integrated into CariMed's Amazon platform for online sales. Herbu CEO Javin Williams said the company is seeking to make a much stronger impact with the new deal and recently introduced new packaging. Meanwhile, Herbu has secured venture capital that will enable the company to acquire raw material at reduced prices and help to increase production. The company is also looking to acquire warehousing space in Kingston, along with an office to carry out administrative functions. Stay with us. Regional and international stories are up next. Welcome back. Time now for regional and international news. Gaming houses in the Bahamas are threatening legal action if the government does not sit down with them to discuss the new taxes imposed on the industry. Ora News' Jared Higgs tells us more.
In a letter to Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest, penned by the association's attorney Alfred Sayers QC, gaming house operators accuse the government of showing preferential treatment to other financial institutions and providers of recreational products. The letter, which is dated May 31st, states that other publicly traded entities, which are similar to members of the Bahamas Gaming Operators Association, won't be subject to what they describe as draconian tax increases. The communication also noted that gaming house operators weren't consulted on the proposed changes. They say a 2016 report out of Sweden suggests that the optimum tax rate for gaming operators in that market was 15 to 20%. According to that study, tax rates beyond 20% would discourage operators from participating in the licensing system. The operators say the motive appears not to be revenue-raising, but rather the penal elimination of smaller operators and the expropriation of the larger operators under the guise of tax measures. They're giving the government 1 week to meet or respond to their letter before they say they'll head to the Supreme Court. The former government awarded 8 licenses to web shop operators back in 2015. This despite the fact that voters rejected the option to regularize the industry during a referendum held in January of 2013. The operators currently enjoy a 10-year bar to entry for new operators. However, Tourism Minister Dionisio de Aguilar has gone on record saying that's a policy he doesn't agree with.
An emergency plan has been created to fix Barbados' ailing economy. The plan, announced by Prime Minister Mia Mottley, includes getting assistance from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and suspending payments to external creditors as it restructures government debt. But while the strategy has received the full backing of the social partnership in Barbados, a regional credit ratings agency is not as impressed by the debt payment move and has given the country its first downgrade under the new Barbados Labour Party administration. The regional rating agency, Carry Chris, dropped Barbados' ratings to Carry C on the foreign currency rating and also on the local currency rating. It placed Barbados on a rating watch as it listed the island's level of creditworthiness as poor. In a statement issued over the weekend, Carrie Chris said the rating action was based on the June 1, 2018 public debt restructuring plan announced by the government of Barbados. Carrie Chris says it will be monitoring the situation in Barbados very closely in the coming days and weeks as it seeks more information on the planned debt restructuring and will further adjust its ratings if so required. Last Friday evening, following a meeting with the social partnership, Prime Minister Mia Mottley said the country was in debt to the tune of more than $7.5 billion, with public debt as high as 171% of GDP, the third highest in the world, behind Japan and Greece. France has warned the United States that it has only a few days to avoid sparking a trade war with its allies. Finance ministers from some of the world's largest economies are concerned and disappointed by U.S. President Donald Trump's new taxes on steel and aluminum imports, but he's not backing down. Al Jazeera's John Hendren reports from Washington, D.C.
With days to go before the G7 summit in Canada, the economic alliance is fractured. The allies are angry and openly talking about a possible trade war.
We think this action is inappropriate. We think it's absurd to consider Canada a security risk to the United States, and therefore we've taken a targeted and considered approach to retaliation.
France's foreign minister also says unless the U.S. reverses its new tariffs on steel and aluminum from Europe, Canada, and Mexico, a trade war is just a few days away. At a meeting ahead of this week's G7 summit in Canada, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin tried to assuage the allies.
President Trump has been very clear in wanting to address trade issues. I don't think in any way the U.S. is abandoning its leadership in the global economy. Quite the contrary. I think we have very broad objectives that are across a rebalancing the trade relationship and the trade deficit.
But he could not offer the one thing U.S. allies want, tariff relief. Trump, briefed by Mnuchin, is not backing down. Taking to Twitter on Saturday, he wrote, "When you're almost $800 billion a year down on trade, you can't lose a trade war." Many economists disagree. They say everyone loses in a trade war because a vicious cycle of tariffs makes goods more expensive all around. Now, some U.S. companies say they fear a trade conflict could end the global economic expansion the upcoming G7 meeting was expected to celebrate.
Our estimates at this point, and these are very rough, but we would expect another 10 to 15% drop.
We're also suffering because of the steel tariffs, which was the genesis of all this. Everything we do involves steel. Our fencing, everything else is steel related. So we're seeing increased prices from those things too. So it is kind of a domino thing.
European leaders have already chosen their targets for retaliation. Iconic American products like Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Levi's jeans, Jack Daniel's whiskey, and Florida oranges, the next casualties in what could be an escalating trade conflict. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Kenya has launched a pilot scheme to export crude oil as part of efforts to capitalize on the country's reserves. Al Jazeera's Catherine Soy reports.
His Excellency the President will now open the
A significant moment in Kenya 6 years after oil was discovered here. President Uhuru Kenyatta symbolically started the pumping of crude oil into one of the trucks transporting 2,000 barrels to the coast, about 1,000 kilometers away. It will take roughly 10 days to get there and months before all 70,000 barrels in storage arrive for export. It's the beginning of a pilot program to see how the international market reacts before full production is expected to start in a few years.
That we can lose all the benefits if we fail to effectively manage our resources. The negative competition for oil and other natural resources has seen hitherto peaceful countries go to war.
It's estimated about 750 million barrels of oil lie beneath this dry region, home to some of the poorest and most marginalized people in the country. Trucking the oil from here will not be easy or cheap.
One of the big problems is dealing with the bad roads from years of neglect. Construction is now quickly going on to make sure that these trucks get to their destination safely and on time. But it's going to take at least 2 years to properly fix the bad stretch.
Achuka Lomeyana knows little about the statistics or logistics. As the herder helps one of his goats give birth, he only hopes that his village will benefit from the oil boom. The local community has been allocated 5% of the oil revenue, while the national and county governments share the rest.
I am not happy about the 5%. I was hoping for 10%. But because it has been decided, we have to manage our expectation and hope the profit really gets to us.
On the other side of this riverbed, 15-year-old Cecilia Yamuria fetches drinking water for her family and animals. She's walked for 30 minutes to get here.
I would want the oil money to help pipe water to our village. I would like my school fees to be paid and more classrooms built.
So many hopes in Turkana are pinned on this oil. Expectations are high that prosperity will come quickly. But just how well the oil will sell abroad and how fast the benefits will trickle down to the villagers will be the real test. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera, Turkana, Northern Kenya.
Stay with us. Talking Stocks comes up next. Welcome back. Time now for Talking Stocks. 51 stocks traded today, of which 22 advanced, 20 declined, and 9 traded firm. The main JSE index declined by 121 points to close at 299,710 points. The junior index advanced by 62 points to close at 3,027 points. Over 4.7 million units traded today, valued at over $87 million on the Jamaican dollar market, while on the US dollar market, 4,000 units traded, valued at almost $2,767 US dollars. JMMB Group, with over 1.4 million units changing hands, accounted for 30% of market volume. Siboney Group was second with 558,000 units trading, and Victoria Mutual Investments, with 519,000 units trading, accounted for 10% of market volume crossing the floor. General Accident Insurance was the top advancer, up 32 cents to close at $3.39, followed by Access Financial Services, up $4 to close at $52, and Sagicor Real Estate X Fund, up 68 cents to close at $15. The main decliners were Epley, down 61 cents to close at $8.25, followed by CAC 2000 down 40 cents to close at $8.50, and Proven Investments down by a cent to close at 20 cents. In foreign exchange trading, the Jamaican dollar lost ground to its three major trading partners today. The U.S. ended the day selling for $128.05, gaining 5 cents on the Jamaican dollar. The Canadian dollar sold for $99.53, gaining 4 cents, while the British pound closed the day selling for $171.45, gaining $1.97 on the Jamaican dollar. And that's the news for this evening, but before we go, a recap of our top story. There continues to be uncertainty this evening surrounding work on the Mandela Highway Expansion Project. Approximately 100 workers walked off the job late last week, complaining of poor working conditions and extremely low wages. The workers employed to China Harbor Engineering Company, CHEC, are accusing the Chinese company of exploiting Jamaican labor. Thanks for watching. For more content, please visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Kenil Gale. Pleasant viewing.